We may not have talked about everything that can be done, but I mean, hiring and the ATS and payroll and communication within the company, contribution to culture, and there may be more. What, where do you see the pushback? I mean, it all sounds great. And the guy goes, well, I'm not doing it. Or do they ever actually just say that, or they just don't do it? But where
Yeah,
is the pushback? What do you have to overcome? I don't want to say convince, but to have people decide they want to do this and it's worthwhile.
absolutely. So with new technology comes change. People inherently are not happy with change. So a good change management process is important. I have one customer in Ohio who they are a prefab steel company. So they had a lot of folks on, they bought applicant tracking and onboarding as well as exact time. So the time and attendance solution. So they had the biggest problem with time theft. And so they started with implementing exact time first and they integrated it with their ERP. And one thing that they found was being able to go on the floor and talk to the individuals, the steel workers who were working on the prefab work. And one thing really resonated. One gentleman who was older in his career said, so this means that the guys that come in and sign in for their buddy that's still on their way in, that guy's not going to get paid for that hour that he wasn't really here. And it was like, yeah, that guy's not going to get paid because they didn't actually clock themselves in. Their buddy clocked them in an hour before they got there. They're like, oh, okay, good, because that guy really makes me frustrated that he's not getting as many hours on the floor that I'm having to do, but yet he's clocked in and he's getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So helping to make it relational to where they are and what frustrations they have, you might find that out in a stay interview. um,
Mhm.
So being able to understand, yes, this is going to overcome that frustration. And that same customer, because they put iPads in their prefab facility for people clocking in and clocking out, they were also able to put design files on there instead of spending lots of money on those printouts that they also had to keep. So they used that as an additional resource and kind of changed the culture. But pausing, and we do that as part of our implementation process, is really helping our customers with that change management. So change management is super important and it's not easy, especially with a company that's not used to using technology for some of these employee based processes.
Yeah.
On listeners, the smaller guys, do you say, hey, let's start with module one?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right?
And it's
Or
not
may, and
sequential.
probably time tracking, I would imagine that's where most of the
Yeah.
game is. But
Absolutely. And then seeing how they can gain efficiencies
yeah,
or cost savings.
Yeah. I think with a couple things with the time management piece, I know a lot of people have salaried project managers or whatever, and they're not tracking time. I do think it is valuable to track time regardless of salary or hourly because it does allow you to find the inefficiencies or why are you spending so much time on this when we really need to be spending time here? And just it allows you to understand where the outputs are going or where the inputs are going inside of your business. But back to your change management process, I've never heard that term, but I love that because I think I've always said like 90% of software is behavior change more than technology and the technical aspects. It's just changing a behavior. And something as simple of having to clock in on a phone when you never clocked in before it's a behavior change. It's a habit. So having a process for managing that change and really instilling that behavior is really valuable. You've mentioned the implementation piece, which is crucial. I think a lot of people are used to self sign-on softwares. They purchase a software, but then they never do anything with it because it wasn't actually implemented properly and specifically to their business. What does that look like for you? What do you guys do for implementation? And is that included with what you pay for the software? Is it an additional fee
Mhm.
on top of it? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So we use what we call the adopt methodology, and really, it's a tried and true way to work with the contractor on gathering information, helping them to have a project plan as to what that implementation is going to look like, what's expected of them. Because it's not just us implementing the software. Oftentimes, we're needing to gather data from their current business or their current employees and make sure that that's available to input into the system. So, of course, with software purchases, you have different levels. So, if some, in the sense that someone might buy 4 modules or 5 modules, and so their implementation is going to look a bit different than someone that maybe
Mhm.
just has exact time for timekeeping for just a smaller number of employees. So there is varying levels of support there. We have a very large support team and support resources as well. So if it is more of a smaller contractor that is implementing the time solution, they would get, support on getting it set up, making sure that they have all their employee data in, and that they're successfully being able to track time, and it is associated with all their different job sites and the geofencing and all of that. And they understand how to pull the reports out of it. Now, if they're implementing a integration with, say, QuickBooks, and they want to get all that implementation or all that timekeeping information into QuickBooks, there's another, set of implementation things that they might need to do to make sure that we're connecting it correctly with QuickBooks. I would say probably some of the applicant tracking and time tracking, the exact time solution, are probably some of the quicker implementations. Once you get
Mhm.
into the implementation that you're doing, say, with, say, you're using Sage 100 or Sage 300 CRE or CMIC, some of those larger ERPs, those might take maybe up to 60 days, 90 days to just make sure that all of that information is tested and flows. So there's really a couple parts, like you mentioned, of implementation. It's the data gathering, it's the implementation and setup, there's the change management, and then the testing to make sure all that information is working well.
Okay. So I think we understand the value of software. As you're really small, probably not, you don't maybe have the time and energy and capacity to focus on it. But there's still ways to get started, even with something as simple as time tracking, and then modularly grow into it.